Bling bling, every time I come around your city, bling bling. Pinky ring, what's about 50, bling bling. Every time I buy a new ride, bling bling. Lorenzo's on Yokohama tires, bling bling. Hello everybody, it's Will, and I am back today playing a little bit of Minecraft. This is the IHateWillCraft series. This is the series in which I mostly play by myself. At least it's been that way thus far. It's been that way thus far, and that's not going to change anytime soon. I do share this world with a few other folks, but they are currently not on right now. In case you guys didn't know, I was just reminiscing about a song that I pretended to hate back in the 90's that I secretly loved. Bling Bling. Bling Bling. Big Timers. Juvenile, Lil Wayne, Cash Money Millionaires. Really enjoyed it. Actually, I liked a lot of the Cash Money Records stuff. I always thought that their songs were fun and shouldn't be taken too seriously. And during the 90's, we all had a tendency to take ourselves way too seriously, especially when it came to music. And that was something I didn't understand at the time, but I pretended to adhere to it. Because I am a false, lying piece of shit that just wants people to like them. But enough of that. I've done a few improvements outside, and I think I'd like to share it with you guys. So here we go. As you see, I added a royal treasury. That's where all my diamonds go, my gold and my gems. What the fuck? Seriously? Motherfucker. Alright, well, I share this world, as I was saying earlier, and I share it with, somebody named Paco, obviously. And he left me a little present. So, I got that to clean up. But let's just go past that for a second. Let's look at what I've done over here. I'm building a small village in order to populate it with villagers in a little bit. That obsidian's there for a reason. I'll talk about it in a little bit. I'm going to fill it with villagers, and I wanted to try a few builds that I've never done before. I usually build with a lot of wood, so this time I decided to go with some stone. These lighter color ones are just half slabs. A lot of these are half slabs too, actually, but yeah, that's what we got here. This house isn't quite finished yet. But this is the engineering house. This is where I'm going to put all my redstone stuff that I'm working with. And this one right here is my food house. That's where my cook's going to live. Got my vegetarian stuff over there. I got my meat and stuff over there. And this one is my blacksmith. This was a fun little build. I'm going to go ahead and destroy this for a second, but this is a working fireplace. You notice that the flames are there. I've actually been cooking in here, but the flames are here. But behind that are two furnaces that I've hidden, and let me take a look at it. See, I got some netherrack right there. I lay the flames down, and I can access the furnace without destroying the flames. Let's see if I got a... There we go. Let's put that back. And so that works out real nice. I added this water over here because every blacksmith I see on TV or movie has a pool of water to dip hot shit into. And of course an anvil for doing anvil-y things. I do have, of course there is a fireplace there. If you look carefully, you can see smoke rising from that fire that's deep down in there. I wanted to try to get more of it out, but it just didn't feel right to me. Not that this fireplace or this chimney feels like it doesn't really look correct to me. But it's a fire to that for no reason. Let's fix that. Okay. But I'm gonna stick with it. Oh shit! I'm gonna stick with it anyway. Okay. Let's put this flint and steel back before I have a fucking accident. Bling bling. I've mentioned before that I love hip hop. I love a lot of hip hop. Alright, and on this side, this is more of our residential homes. This is a very basic efficiency. But the good thing about it is you don't share walls, so this is... I would say this is on the low mid-range as far as this neighborhood goes. I think it's a safe neighborhood, lots of lighting, not a lot of gangs, not a lot of crime. This is more of our deluxe feature. Still a studio, but you know, you got a lot more windows. You got a custom wood floor, which is nice. So that works out good. And you got a little stoop and everything. And I decided to use some acacia wood because I don't really build with it a lot. And so that's what that looks like. This one also has a small upgrade. A little skylight. A little tinted skylight. This over here, this is our apartment complex. This is a fourplex, actually. Down here are very basic efficiencies as well. Good size, though, you know, for if you're single or a busy professional. Perfect. And up here they're a little smaller, but the view, wonderful. Just absolutely spectacular view. Plus you got this stoop. You come out here. This one I'm gonna probably discount a little bit just because you have to look at the roof. But again, you still have that good front view. So once we get some villagers in here breeding, I think this place is gonna feel really alive. And I'm not finished with it. I'm gonna start building some more, or I'm gonna complete construction on it. I'm gonna add some more to this neighborhood, and then my plan is to start building that away over there. Let me show it to you. Let's see, where I built the diagonal bridge. This whole valley over here along the water, excuse me, and that extreme hill right there where the bridge connects to, that all belongs to me. So this valley, that valley, all this belongs to me. At least I'm claiming it, and I'm destroying anything that anybody builds on it because it belongs to me. I'm also... I hate these walls here. I keep forgetting to change them out. But, I don't know what to replace them with. I think fences, you know, just regular wood fences is probably what's going to go there, but I don't know. So, we have some stuff to take care of today, as far as just kind of cleaning up. And first thing we're going to do is clean up this giant Paco over here. What a dick. Alright, so we need to go get our tools. Let's see. Oh, I'll use the iron pickaxe. That's fine. Alright. So we're going to clean up Paco's little stupid mess. At least I get a lot of free torches out of it, though. And I know exactly what this is. This is in response to something I did to Steph. Steph, in this world at least, doesn't want us to live anywhere near each other. And maybe in the real world too, but she's purposely built far away from both me and Paco. And while I was out exploring one day, by sheer coincidence, I came across her build site. And so I know where she lives now. And I sent her a little picture of my little naked man, the proof that I found her place. Matter of fact, I'll show the picture right here. So I found that and posted it to her Facebook. And everybody had a good laugh about it. And Paco, always loving to do a little payback on other people's behalf, because he is a chivalrous gentleman. I guess he decided to write his name right there, because it's a pretty... What the fuck is that? Dick. It says Dick. It says Dick. God damn it. Does this look like there's a dick? Does it look like there's a dick? Fucking asshole. Actually, you know what? I bet that was Steph. That's a Steph move. See, Paco had a presentation where I'd come out and see it all lit up. Steph just was like graffiti on the wall. Fuck you. Here's dick. Doesn't even fit. Just a big giant dick that don't fit nowhere. Yeah. Stephanie has the dirtier mouth, which is weird because Paco is a he's one of my stand-up comic friends. I guess I should talk about that a little bit. Oh, you fucker. Fucking Paco's everywhere. I've known Paco for over 10 years now. We both wrote for the same radio show, which was the Pugs and Kelly Show in Dallas, Texas. That's in the United States of America, kids. And we became fairly quick friends, though at first I didn't like him, but I don't like anybody at first. Especially when people are trying to be friendly, and I also had the distinct feeling whenever we befriended, where he tried to befriend me, that he wasn't used to befriending other folks. So it was kind of a weird beginning of a friendship, because at the time I considered everybody that wasn't me, that did anything similar to what I did, to be my enemy. I was not interested in working with anybody. I'm still wary of people that I collaborate with, or that want to collaborate with me. And but when I was that age, I was definitely on high alert on everybody, because I was warned. Hey, people are snakes. But it's been my experience that he was never really like that. And it became a really good friendship, and it's been one that's lasted a long time. Let's go to sleep. But, we wrote for the Pugs and Kelly Show together, and we did good work. We were very funny folks when we were young, and we had the opportunity to write for a little bit more. For other things, at least I did. I wrote, I did a little ad copy as well. I had a few opportunities through people I knew in radio and television, because it's one big happy family sometimes. And I was kind of the new kid in town, where I wasn't particularly well known amongst the pros, amongst the suits at least, but amongst the rank and file, everyday media folk. They knew who I was, at least. Made a lot of good connections, and I was able to turn that into writing ad copy and writing for a magazine or two. Local stuff, small stuff. I don't even remember the name of one of them. I think it was like Vanity. Not Vanity, that's a big one. Something douchey. It may have been Douche. I don't know, but it was something completely douchey, and I hated it, but it paid. Paco and I also ended up writing a topical news blog together, where we just we'd rip on the local news, or not the local news, but the current events of the day. And it was okay. It was okay. It didn't do crazy business, but it certainly helped grow my name a little bit. And we got to the point to where we finally we started getting plagiarized. And that was around the time where I said, you know what, I fucking hate writing. Hate writing the news. So I stopped. And he's gone on to... He's actually... I'm not going to reveal his real name, because obviously Paco's a white guy. He's not Hispanic at all. He's a white guy, German American. And blonde hair, blue eyes... kind of white guy, but he goes by Paco. It's a nom de plume, a pseudonym, whatever you want to call it. But he is a local stand-up, Dallas, Texas local stand-up. He's won a few awards for his stand-up, local awards. I mean, come on, let's not give the guy a big head here. And he's doing really well. He's very funny. I'm not going to reveal his real name, but if he chooses to, and he gives me permission to do so, I will. And You guys should really check him out. He's got stuff on YouTube. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about too much about Paco right now because there's other things I'd like to talk about actually. Dick. You know, my wife, I know this is my wife because she draws dicks on everything. She writes dicks. She draws penises on everything that I have to use in public. Like, I make a grocery list, right? I do all the grocery shopping. I do all the cooking. I do all that. And Stephanie likes to take my grocery list, and I ask her, hey, what do you want on it? And she goes, oh, hold on, I'll write a few things. And when I get it back, I don't even open it until I get to the grocery store, which I should learn by now because, really, I've been with her for such a long time, and she does this almost every single time, but I take it, I don't open it, I open it at the store, usually around some old ladies, and boom, there's a penis drawn on it. Boom, there's a picture of me with a dick in my mouth, or boom, there's just something awful on it, usually involving a penis, and so people over my shoulder at the supermarket are looking over, and they just see a dick on my sheet. It's a sheet filled with dicks. Oh, this is my lumber yard over here. This is what I wanted to show you. A lumber yard, you know, the train track trick, but that's over here, and it's nothing too special. I like having a world feel like everything's separated, because in the real world, not everything's a warehouse right next to each other, like we tend to do in Minecraft. And while it's certainly useful to do that, in the real world, everything's got a bit of separation. Even though they're all owned by the same fucking companies. Alright. But what I wanted to talk about today, and I'm not really going to build anything today, is the 90's. Now, I grew up in the 90's. Spent a lot of time in the 90's, and I am a true 90's kid, as in, I started out the 90's in adolescence, and I finished with puberty, completed with puberty, having sex with ladies, at least some of the time, maybe once or twice, I don't know, yeah, I finished it completely, finished. My body was done as far as my sex parts go. And to me, that is the definition of a 90's kid. It's, did you spend the majority of your childhood within a decade? And a lot of people who claim to be 90's kids, and I understand why they do this, because it's trendy right now to do so. And they do have some ties to the 90's. But being born in 1997, 1998, 1999 does not make you a 90's kid. To me, you are a child of the 2000s. You might even be a child of the 2010s, alright? But that doesn't make you a 90's kid, and that's not a shot at you. 10 years ago, I tried to be a child of the 80's, because it was trendy. And the reason why it was trendy, and why it's trendy to be a 90's kid now, and the 90's pop culture is in heavy rotation as far as nostalgia conversations go, is because of something called the 20-year rule. And I touched on this during my first episode of this series. I touched on this on the first episode of my series. And the 20-year rule, what that states, is that every 20 years, a generation will look back at their childhood, at the things that matter to them, pop culturally, and reevaluate it, put new value to it. They become nostalgia for what they would call a simpler time, or a less complicated time, because, you know, let's face it, adulthood sucks. Adulthood can really fucking suck. And so they kind of remember things. And you can see it in more than just conversation. You feel the influence musically. You feel the influence as far as our media goes in general. What is old is new again. We recently just had another show debut called Girl Meets World, which is, of course, a follow-up, a to a show called Boy Meets World, which was a very popular show when I was a kiddo. And the reason why it works is because of that 20-year rule. If they did this 10 years ago, nobody would have gave a flying fuck. If they would do it 10 years from now, nobody would give a flying fuck. You know, because everybody would want to watch a follow-up of that 70s show or whatever was popular 10 years ago. I don't know, I didn't watch that crap, but well, that's the way that works. It's a 20-year rule. And I'm of the mindset where I say, fuck nostalgia. Okay? I don't think it really serves anybody. It's fun to remember and have fun with that sometimes, but to make that a part of your daily conversation or to pine for a time that's just not here anymore, to me, it's stupid. I don't particularly like it. That'll work. Ooh, not bad for a little cheap enchantment. Let's go kill some spiders. So, when I say fuck nostalgia, it's not so much that I dislike the decades that came before. I didn't dislike the 90s. There's a lot about the 90s I did like. It's more the pedestal that people put it up on. You know, people choose to remember the good, and they forget that, you know, sometimes it sucked. They try to say that what we have today is garbage, without remembering that a lot of what we had back then was garbage. What the hell? I've never been over here. Let's check it out. Okay. This is interesting. I hear slime, too. Always use more slimes. Oh. Bad guy. Alright. Suck on them nuts, punk. So, that's my only issue with the nostalgia, really. It's just like anything that you look at over time, we tend to put things on a pedestal that don't deserve to be. But there are things I do miss about the 90s, and I thought I'd talk about them today. And these are the 5 things that I miss about the 90s. Hold on, let's get through this. We'll start with number 5. And I'm not going to do this in any particular order, but if I had to choose the weakest one, I would say this is my weakest one. Number 5 are Jinkos. Jinko jeans. I miss Jinko jeans. For those of you who are too young, or for those of you who were not cool enough to have Jinkos back then, and have no idea what it was, what Jinko jeans were, they were these giant pants with big-ass pockets that would run... The pocket would run from your ass down past your knee. And the jeans were probably about 3 times the width of your leg. So they were very baggy, very, they really made no sense. I think they make more sense now than they did back then. Like now, you could fit an entire iPad in the back pocket, and it fits fine. And, you know, you get a little bit more space than the skinny jeans, and a little bit more room to breathe. But I do miss Jinko jeans, and part of it was because it was a comfort thing. You know, Jinkos were very comfortable. You having that much space. It was like walking around in pajamas all the time. But better, because it was baggier and made your parents upset that you were wearing it. It's a scary spot, man. Wish I had more stuff to block all that lava with. But yeah, Jinko jeans. Miss Jinkos. If you don't know what they are, Google them and then laugh about how stupid we looked. But it was something that everybody wore. It didn't matter. You know, in high school, at least, I don't know about other places, but in my high school, everybody separated themselves by what music they were into. You know, the goth kids hung out with the goth kids because they liked goth music. Your hip-hop kids hung out with hip-hop kids, but there was probably 2 different types of hip-hop kids. There were the mainstream hip-hop kids that liked, you know, the Big Timers and all that Dirty South garbage. And then there was the guys that liked the indie stuff. Probably same as it ever was. And then, you know, there you had just generic, very generic alternative rock people, and that's what they called it, even though they were probably fans of, you know, of postmodern punk and grunge and all that stuff. But it was one thing, Jinkos, in the mid and late 90s, that everybody wore. No matter who you were or what you were into, you just wore it. And that was it. That was the uniform of North Crowley High School and Crowley Middle School. The other thing I miss, number 4, and this now we are in no particular order. The other thing I miss are arcades. And we still have arcades today, and arcades in the 90s weren't exactly a new idea. I mean, we had arcades for probably 20 years at that point. I gotta look at the actual history of video games, but I believe it was about 20 years. But it's certainly something we don't have as much now because of the hardware capabilities that we have at home. But during the 90s, we didn't have that. If you wanted to play a game that looked as good as Killer Instinct or Mortal Kombat, like truly as good as it, then you had to get your ass over to the arcade. You know, if you wanted to play with more than 4 people comfortably, you had to go to the arcade. It was a social gathering. It was everything. It was a lot of fun. Growing up, we had a few places. The younger kids would go to Funtime Pizza because they still had like all the rides and games, and that was fun. You know, you could still do quite a good bit of gaming. Simpsons Arcade. TMNT, that's a little Ninja Turtles arcade. Those are probably 2 of my favorites. X-Men Arcade, oh, love the X-Men Arcade. I used to play that all the time. I was a beat-em-up kind of guy until Marvel vs. Capcom 2 came out, and that was around the time where the Dreamcast, even the first Marvel vs. Capcom, but that was around the time that the Dreamcast was available, and since I was able to play at home, I got really fucking good at it, and to this day, any arcade I've ever been to, I have never lost a Marvel vs. Capcom fight, nor have I ever lost a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 fight in an arcade. I've lost a few at home, but never in an arcade, because those were the proving grounds. So I miss arcades. Now, these days, when people visit arcades, it's for the nostalgia again. You know, it's for the niche aspect of it. You go, and a lot of times they're not really made for younger people anymore. At least the ones that aren't a Chuck E. Cheese or Dave & Buster's, you know, ones that's really just designed to take your money for pseudo-gambling and make you think that you won something. But really, at the end of the day, you spent, you know, $50 to get some crap from the dollar store you could have gotten, you know, 100 times over. Ooh. But if you go to some of the more, I don't want to say hipstery, but we'll say hipstery parts of town, no matter what city you live in, there's usually a retro arcade there. And while it's fun, I think it's kind of counterintuitive to what it meant at that time to be an arcade. But, I mean, that's just something that's never going to come back. Get killed, punk. Suck on them! I want to go over there, but first we're going to go over here. Collect this stuff. I mean, games were a lot harder back then, too, because they were essentially designed just to steal your quarters. They were designed to be accessible enough to where you had the illusion that you could easily beat it. And some people could, but, you know, there were those were the exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, these games were horrendously hard. Just mind-numbingly hard. They just gave you enough hope. Make you think that, oh, around the corner, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to put my name on the scoreboard, and everybody will respect me. But that was never the case. And if you did, usually, and there were, again, exceptions to this, but usually it was because you spent way more money than you should have. Way more money than you should have. I know if I can think about the money I wasted at the arcade as an adult, if I were to think about the money I wasted as a kid at the arcade through my adult mind, that's what I'm trying to say, I would probably vomit into my mouth over and over again. Just shoot it up into the air, catch it with my mouth, and say, this is what I deserve for being an idiot as a child. Because it was probably just way more money. I don't know how much money it was, but it's probably a huge amount. All because I thought that I was good at games, when really I was being took. But that's something we miss. I know I've talked to other people my age about games today, and while the indie scene certainly seems to have this, a lot of mainstream games, there's no real penalty for dying. But that's something that we don't have anymore. Let's see, how do we get out of this mug? Alright, the other thing I miss, and this is game related again, well that's okay because this is a gaming channel mostly, is having an entire summer dedicated to a particular game. And for me, it was mostly Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, stuff like that. That really took up most of my summers in the 90s when I wasn't working for my father. There were clips where my dad didn't make me work at his body shop, and during that time I would get as much of my gaming in as possible. In school I would study. When school started, I would study, and when you're studying, you don't really have the time to dedicate, 12-hour days to playing Final Fantasy VII, and that's something I would do in the summer. I would just take that time and really dedicate myself to playing a game like that. And I don't have that kind of time now because, Minecraft, you can turn on Minecraft and play for an hour and then shut it off and be like, okay, that's enough for now. And sometimes we get hooked when we get into a particular build or we find ourselves in a cave like this and we want to play for a little bit longer. But for the most part, most of us can turn on this game, play for an hour, turn it off, and go do something else. Let's put that there. Okay. But you can't do that with... Ooh. I remember this. Okay. We will come back to you later. Now, that's something that we couldn't do when we were playing one of these Squaresoft RPGs because the stories were so engrossing. It was like reading a novel, it was like reading a great novel or watching a great anime series that you had, some control over. Whether it was linear or not, whether you actually had control didn't matter, just because you had the illusion of control over the events. And this is also before we had, internet walkthroughs, and it's not like they didn't exist. I know I used quite a few internet walkthroughs for Chrono Cross, but it wasn't as saturated of a market. There wasn't a YouTube, there wasn't anything like that. So when a rumor would start, and a young kid like me didn't really understand internet forums or anything like that, we all had word of mouth. When that would start, a rumor would start like, oh, you can actually bring Eris back to life. So we're like, what? And so we spend the entire summer trying to figure that out. Or I would. By myself, very lonely. We would spend the entire summer trying to figure that out. And that's something that we don't have anymore. And I do miss that. but I think it's more not so much that I miss the time or the games even or the technology. It's I do miss the times. That's what I'm trying to say. I miss that a lack of responsibility for anything real. So instead of really saying I miss the games, I think I should say that I miss the lack of responsibility. But whatever. The other things I miss. It's not really a thing so much as it is a person. Is Kurt Cobain. I miss Kurt Cobain. I miss the opportunity to see what he would do next, and that's the thing that bothers me. I was a big Nirvana fan 20 years ago. Huge Nirvana fan. I was a little young, but Nirvana was the first non-hip-hop group that I got into, and I got into them right before Kurt put a shotgun in his mouth and blew his own brains out. Nirvana, I don't mean to laugh at that. It's tragic to think about because, in retrospect, he was a young man. He had his whole life ahead of him, and he did that to himself. And there's speculation as to why. I don't know. I don't pretend to know why. I don't think anybody really knows why except for Kurt. But I do miss him. And I didn't know him, but the thing that I miss, and this is what I remember from finding out that Kurt Cobain died, this was my thought. My thought was, man, I wish I really wanted to see what he was going to do next. That was my thought. And that's still the thought that I have today when I think about it. What would Kurt Cobain have thought? And as I've gotten older, there's been other people from that time that I've learned to appreciate, or I found out about. Starving! Nobody told me anything. But there were other people from that timeline that I became introduced to as an adult, who also passed away. And I think the same thing. One of them is Bill Hicks, the great Texas comedian, who his career was ended way too soon by pancreatic cancer. And right around the time where his career probably was going to take off, go in a direction that it should have. He was much bigger in Europe than he ever was in the States. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Bill Hicks, if you know who Dennis Leary is, and if you've seen any of Dennis Leary's stuff in the 90's, Bill Hicks was the guy that Dennis Leary stole all that from. Except Bill Hicks was better. And as somebody that writes thievery of an idea, stealing a bit is the worst sin you can commit. And for that reason alone, I have a hard time watching anything Dennis Leary does. But, Kurt Cobain, dead at 27. I saw an interview with Courtney Love years later. I believe it was in a magazine. But the interviewer asked, what would Kurt have thought about playing? I forgot what it was, but what kind of man do you think Kurt would be right now? What do you think? What kind of music do you think he would have made? What would he think about this or that? And Courtney Love, who very controversial figure. I don't really know why, and it's probably no real fault of her own, aside from that she was married to a very beloved man with some problems. But she said this, and I remember this very clearly because it was kind of beautiful in its own way. She said she doesn't know. She has no idea. And the reason for that is because, what she said, Kurt killed himself at 27. We don't know what he would have thought. He wasn't done growing up. He wasn't done living. We don't know if Kurt would have stayed Kurt or if Kurt would have grew up We don't know if Kurt would have stayed true to his grunge ways, to his ideals, to his beliefs that he had as a 20-year-old. But we also don't know if Kurt would have, become the next Matchbox 20 and sold music that secretaries can listen to, and we don't know that. We don't know if he would have put out a hip-hop album with Jay-Z. We don't know any of that. We don't know that because Kurt killed himself at 27. And so when I think about that, and I think about my initial thoughts the day that Kurt died, and I think about what Courtney Love said in that interview, it upsets me because, again, I wanted to see what he was going to do next. The last thing about the 90s that I miss, and again, I'm a hip-hop guy, is actually two people who died way too young. And that is, of course, Tupac Shakur and notorious B.I.G. Now, growing up in the 90s, especially if you're a hip-hop fan, there were two different types. You were either a Tupac guy or a Biggie guy. And I was most definitely a Biggie guy. Before hip-hop, rap, whatever you want to call it, before that became homogenized, I'm lost. Before that became so homogenized to the point to where everybody sounds similar. Everybody has that raspy Lil Wayne voice, or at least amongst the mainstreamers. Everybody, you can feel the real influence of the Dirty South movement of the late 90s, early 2000s. The Dirty South Bling era. That still permeates today, more so than any of the things that came out from either coast in the 90s. And the reason for that is because it sells so well. At the end of the day, it's about how many records you sell, how many MP3s you sell, I guess you should say now. And I don't fault him for that. It's disappointing, but I don't fault him for that. But back then, you still had regional sounds, even amongst the biggest acts. You can't listen to a Wu-Tang album and then listen to a Ghetto Boys album and not hear a difference. There were people that grew beyond their sound and were able to reach an audience that would usually not be drawn to it. Southern rappers like the Outkast, who's still on my list of favorites after all these years. They were able to reach out far beyond their geography and reach people on both coasts. Everybody was listening to fucking Outkast in the 90s. Didn't matter where you were from. But they were able to do it. For the most part, though, you had two folks. You had Biggie folks and you had Tupac folks. And I was a Biggie folk. I liked the New York sound over that West Coast stuff. And, but when they died, a lot of the fun of hip-hop, and it suddenly became, I don't know, just less fun for me, personally. When I was like, oh, there's repercussions for this. If you walk around pretending to be a gangster, people are going to assume you're a gangster and then light you up. That's not fun. So, two things I miss from the 90s. Biggie and Tupac. Hello! Hi! Ooh, you look nice. You are bling blinging, huh? Let's kill you. But, I think I wasted enough of your time today. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I just started talking. But, this is Will. I am signing off. Take care of yourself. Oh, next time I think I'm going to talk about, so we're going to stick with this whole 90s thing. Next time I'm going to talk about things I do not miss from the 90s. Things that were way overrated. Hint, pogs are stupid. Alright, this is Will. I am signing off. Take care of yourself, and have a wonderful day.